The wheel may be the most famous invention humans did not invent when you think they did. People farmed, built settlements, sailed rivers, and moved enormous loads for thousands of years before wheeled vehicles appear in the archaeological record. The circle was never the hard part. The hard part was making a wheel and an axle work together. And that took far longer than it seems like it should. So why? Why did humans need thousands of years to invent something a child can draw in 2 seconds? Start before the wheel existed. Imagine you need to move a heavy load across the ground. A pile of grain, a stone block, timber, a dead animal. You can carry it. You can drag it on a sledge. You can put smooth branches underneath and roll the load forward. All of those methods work. And that is exactly the problem. If a bad solution is good enough, there is less pressure to invent a better one. For most early communities, people did not need carts traveling hundreds of kilometers. Villages were small, fields were close. Rivers could move heavy cargo with far less effort than dragging it over land. A wheel is only revolutionary when the world around it is ready to use one. And by the 4th millennium BCE, that world was changing. Settlements were getting larger, agriculture was producing more surplus. Animals such as cattle could provide pulling power. Craftspeople were becoming better at shaping wood with stone and copper tools. And somewhere inside that combination, rotating technology became practical. By the 4th millennium BCE, potters in Western Asia were using rotating devices to shape clay. That matters because it proves people understood controlled rotation before wheeled transport became common. But a potter's wheel and a wagon wheel are not the same machine. A potter only needs a disc to spin. A vehicle needs something much harder. It needs a wheel that stays round under weight, an axle that stays aligned, a joint that can rotate without tearing itself apart, and 2 sides that work together while the whole structure is bouncing over uneven ground. That is not a circle. That is an engineering system. Here is the mechanical trick. When you drag a heavy object, the underside scrapes across the ground the entire way. A rotating wheel changes where that resistance happens. Instead of forcing the whole load to slide across the earth, the wheel rolls while the axle supports the weight. But that only works if the center stays centered. Cut the hole badly and the vehicle lurches. Make the axle weak and it snaps. Make the fit too tight and friction stops the wheel. Make it too loose and the wheel wobbles itself apart. Even the wood matters. A large wheel has to survive repeated stress along its grain while carrying a load far heavier than itself. So the famous simple machine depends on precision. That may also explain why rolling logs are not automatically a straight road to the wheel. Logs can move a load, but they constantly have to be picked up from the back and carried to the front. A wheel solves that by keeping the roller attached to the vehicle. The roller comes with you. That small conceptual change turns a temporary trick into reusable transport. Around the middle of the 4th millennium BCE, evidence for that system suddenly appears across a surprisingly wide area. At Flintbeck in northern Germany, archaeologists found parallel wheel tracks preserved beneath a burial mound. Radiocarbon dating places them around 3400 BCE. Someone drove a wheeled vehicle across that ground more than 5,000 years ago. In Poland, the Brunosi's pot preserves one of the earliest known images interpreted as a wagon, dating to roughly the same broad period. And in the Near East, images and models of wheeled vehicles also begin appearing. That creates a problem historians still debate. Where was the wheel invented? The evidence does not give us one clean birthplace. It appears in Europe and the Near East so close together in time that researchers have argued for both rapid spread and multiple centers of invention. In other words, we know roughly when the wheel entered history. We do not know whose hands made the first one. And then, in 2002, archaeologists working in the Ljubljana marshes of Slovenia uncovered something extraordinary. Wood, not an image, not a track, an actual wheel with part of its axle. Radiocarbon dating placed it between roughly 3,350 and 3,100 BCE. The wheel was built from ash wood. The axle was oak, different woods in different parts of the machine. This was not somebody experimenting with a random round plank. It was skilled woodworking, and look at what that means. By the time a wooden wheel survives in the archaeological record, the technology is already sophisticated. The first wheel was probably older than the oldest wheel we have found. Wood rots. Most early wheels disappeared. Archaeology is not showing us the first attempt, it is showing us the tiny fraction that survived. The earliest vehicle wheels were heavy, solid wooden discs. They were nothing like a bicycle wheel, but they changed the relationship between humans and distance. With a cart and draft animals, one person could move far more food, timber, tools, and goods than a person could carry. That changes farming, it changes trade, it changes where a settlement can get its resources, and eventually it changes war. But the wheel did not conquer every landscape. This is another part people forget. Wheels are terrible without usable ground. Mud, rocks, steep slopes, dense forest, and deep sand can turn a cart into dead weight. In places with good rivers, boats could remain better transport. The wheel was not a universal upgrade. It was a technology that became powerful when roads, animals, woodworking, and economic demand came together. And once they did, humans kept finding new places to use rotation. Heavy, solid wheels became lighter designs. Spoked wheels later made fast vehicles such as chariots possible. Rotating shafts became parts of machines. Wheels drove mills. Gears transferred motion. Pulleys lifted loads. Centuries later, factories would fill with spinning axles, flywheels, rollers, and gears. The wheel stopped being one invention. It became a mechanical language. And that is why asking, "Who invented the wheel?" is almost the wrong question. Nobody woke up one morning, looked at a circle, and invented modern transportation. The breakthrough required a whole package: precise woodworking, an axle, a bearing surface, strong materials, pulling power, and a society that actually needed to move heavy things over land. The wheel looks simple because 5,000 years of engineering have made it invisible. Today you can find the same basic idea under a car, inside a suitcase, beneath an office chair, in a bicycle, inside a clock, and buried deep inside machines you never see. Different materials, different sizes, different speeds. Same principle: something rotates so something else can move. The person who first made that system work left no name, no patent, no written explanation. Only tracks, fragments, images, and eventually a piece of ancient wood preserved in wet ground. But every time a wheel turns beside you, that anonymous experiment is still running. The circle was always there. The invention was learning how to make it carry us.